I want to talk a little bit about stuff that I've heard that's going off in France, because Europe continues its death by 1,000 cuts at the hands of liberal progressive governments that are ideologically blind to what Islamisation means. And I want to start off by talking about the attack on freedom of speech. There's been another murder, another stabbing in France connected to the Charlie Hebdo cartoons. The reason why Islamists are using violence against liberal democracies is because they hope to take by terror that which our ancestors fought for by blood. The rights that we have in the Magna Carta were won for us because people stood up to the king. The rights that we have in the West have been built out of and fought for by blood. Now, it's fair to say that liberal democracy is not inherent to Christianity. And so I am not equating liberal democracy or liberal freedoms with the Christian faith, because the Christian faith has existed in other kinds of states, in other kinds of socio-economic and political systems. However, right now, because the church has lost any political vision for society, there are two dominant political visions. One is a liberal progressive vision, and the other is that being offered by Islamists of a caliphate. And the Islamists are enraged by freedom of speech, because freedom of speech permits us to say things that Muslims find offensive. And so we see that instead of engaging in the democratic process, a minority of Muslims are engaged in terror, are engaged in brute force. But that emergence of terror from brute force comes out of a milieu that is actually much more rooted in the wider Islamic community. Something that has been testified to by members of the Dawah team, by Ali Dawah, who says that freedom of speech is bullshit, by Mohammed Hijab, who stands against the idea of freedom of speech. Which means that within the Islamic community, nascent to its own culture, is an opposition to the things that our grandfathers and our great-grandfathers fought for in World War I and World War II. Islam and liberal progressive political thought are not compatible. And we have seen that recently in France with yet another attack because of the Charlie Hebdo magazine. Now, ladies and gentlemen, what is the problem? The problem is that our liberal governments, the liberal establishment, the Conservative Party, the Labour Party, the Liberal Democrat Party, their equivalents in France, their equivalents in America, both the Democrats and the Republicans, have bought into a political ideology that assumes a priori, against all the evidence, that multiculturalism is the way that we should govern our society. That multiculturalism, liberal multiculturalism, is effective and works. In other words, the state is saying that it has no stake in the values that we live by. They're all open for free and fair competition. Now, we Christians have a model of multiculturalism that we have practiced for 2,000 years successfully, that has brought nations together from different ethnicities, languages and cultures, and have brought them together within the body of the church. So we Christians do not need any lectures about what it means to be multicultural. But we can give lectures about what it means to be multicultural. And the fact of the matter is, liberal progressive multiculturalism is not working, because liberal progressive multiculturalism cannot call a spade a spade. Liberals feel very comfortable in standing up against fascist Nazi ideology. They're very able to be enraged at the swastika or about glorifications of Hitler or Goebbels. But these same liberal progressives are silent about the deaths of 100 million people at the hands of communism. It is quite acceptable to walk down the streets of any Western society carrying the sickle and hammer red flag. It is quite acceptable in Western society to wear T-shirts glorifying murderers like Che Guevara. It is quite acceptable to celebrate the revolutionary murder of people like Fidel Castro. The fact of the matter is, communism is the blind spot of liberal society. And because of that blind spot, those same liberal progressives are unable to see the influence of communist thought on the political mainstream. Communist thought has sought to increase the divisions in Western society. It's why communists are in bed with identitarians. It's why they support movements that increase racial tension like the BLM. Communists support the idea of unfiltered, unqualified mass immigration. Mass immigration of people that do not simply put down their values at the border and pick up nice classical liberal values as they pick up their British passport. They don't do that. What they do is they import the values of their indigenous culture into Europe, as they have done in France. France 24 is a liberal mainstream media platform. It isn't a right-wing platform. It isn't a Nazi platform. It isn't a platform of the National Front. But recently on France 24, they have covered that in the suburbs of Paris, the disappearance of women from the high street. And they have attached to reporters cameras and microphones showing the harassment of women by Muslim men in the suburbs of Paris, leading to the excavation, the elimination of the female form of womanhood from the high streets and the suburbs of Paris. Why? Because as it was caught on camera, when two women reporters for France 24 walked into a Muslim cafe, the cafe owner encouraged them to leave. The other occupants of the cafe began to harass them, and they were told that they were not welcome. Muslim men themselves in another cafe, rather than sit in a cafe where women were sat, chose instead to leave. Why? Because the Muslims that have mainly come from North Africa, Arabized Africans, have imported Islamic values into Western Europe. And so women have been the victim of the blindness of the liberal progressives, who, for the sake of their virtue-signalling hypocrisy, who talk about wanting to defend women's rights, are willing to be blind to the fact that Islam teaches that women in public wearing nothing less than a tent are an abuse to the moral good. They are causing fitna in the land, that a man is the owner of a woman, that he is the guardian of a woman, that he is the protector of a woman, and so it is scandalous for women to be walking around in those areas where Muslim migration has meant that Muslim values, Islamic values, are the dominant ideology. Islam teaches that the witness of a woman is half that of a man in legal proceedings. Have you ever heard such rubbish? Muhammad said in the hadiths that women are deficient in their religion on account of their deficiency of intellect. Muhammad said in the hadiths that the majority of occupants in hell are women. By contrast, Christianity teaches that both men and women are made in the image of God simultaneously, and the attributes that are true to men are also true to women. And that is the reason why, as far back as the medieval period, the freedoms of Christian women were considered scandalous to the critics of Christian civilization, because women were said to be endowed with reason equal to that of men. The Christian faith teaches the equality of men and women, but the evidence demonstrates that in Islamic societies, women end up being treated differently in law. That is a fact. If you don't believe me, dress like that in Saudi Arabia and see what happens to you. In Saudi Arabia, dress is prescribed in law. If you don't believe me, go to Iran, become an Iranian citizen and dress like that. You will be said to be un-Islamic in your dress. If you don't believe me, go to Afghanistan and dress like that and see how you are treated. The fact of the matter is that Islam teaches values that are incompatible to Western values, because Western values are rooted in Judeo-Christian values. But the difference, sister, is that the law is stating that men and women should both wear masks. But in Islamic cultures, only women are asked to cover their face. These are not morally equivalent. Ladies and gentlemen, we are suffering the death of 1,000 cuts in Western Europe because of the weakness of liberal progressives who do not and are not able to call a tyrannical ideology tyrannical. Islam teaches that Jews and Christians, that their very lives are worth half that of Muslims in law. Islam teaches that Christians cannot marry Muslim men, but Muslim men can marry Christian women. Islam teaches that Christians cannot carry out their processions in an Islamic state. Islam teaches that Christians cannot portray their crosses on their churches or churches that are higher than mosques.
Look what you've done to the
And the liberals will not call it out.
No.
Why?
Nakedness.
Because liberals have bought into the idea
Women are used for the market.
Peace is the highest value, and that any cost is worth paying for the price of peace. And that is why they say that pointing out these truths is causing division. And they are right. Pointing out these truths does cause division. But Jesus said, I have not come but to cause a man and a father and a son and a daughter to be divided upon the truth. Christ has said that I have come to bring division to the world.
In every religion,
because the truth divides. And so we must speak the truth, even if the truth is unwelcome, even if the truth causes division, even if the truth causes conflict. We must speak the truth. If I criticize Nazism, no one calls me a Naziphobe.
If you're fat,
if I criticize communism, no one calls me a commiphobe.
No one.
Why can't you talk about the Jewish women?
Hinduism, no one calls me a Hinduphobe. But if I criticize Islam, I am called an Islamophobe. How is it that we have stumbled into this ideological blindness?
You are ignorant man.
Europe, wake up!
You think you know it all, but you don't. You think he knows everything.
Your leaders have lied to you. I'm telling you that Islam teaches the same things as Judeo-Christianity. It does not teach the same doctrine. It does not teach the same values. It does not teach the same beliefs. Another example of the
English and the French, they were
liberals. They have justified. They have justified.
We're still under the Christians. We're still under the Christians till today.
The desecration
is not
the Christians, they are running out
Jewish religion in the
The
Bible.
desecration
if you go back to history, in this country,
eBay sells T-shirts, not all anti-Christian,
Napoleon
but
Bonaparte
eBay will not sell products
in the Bible. Women were not allowed to raise
the Muslims. So it's okay to sell products offensive to Christians, but it is not okay
Christian Orthodox,
to sell
they cover
products
themselves.
that offends Muslims.
Don't tell lies. Don't tell lies.
The liberals
Talk
on
about the Jews. Talk about the Jews.
The Jews that were victims. The Christians, they slaughtered the Jews.
Exactly. Broadcast the Jerry Springer opera. But these same networks will not broadcast programs that are offensive to Muslims.
Before under Germany.
Why? Because the liberals are hypocrites.
Been expelled to
You
North
are-
Africa.
you are an ignorant.
North Africa.
You are fanatic.
Don't let them
You are
browbeat
dash
you
Christian,
into
dash.
being
Bad
silent
Christian dash.
about the horrors of Islamic teaching. Stand up for a Judeo-Christian civilization.
One world.
Embrace
We don't
way.
live in
Muslim
three worlds.
Christianity.
We live in
Yeah.
one
Defend
world.
the
Dominated
idea
by America.
The Jews,
Christian
they make fun of your God.
Wake up, Europe! Call out the
They make
hypocrites!
fun of your
Stand up
of
for
the
the truth!
Son of
George
Mary,
Bush
Son
used
of
the
God,
Bible
and the
to
Father,
invade
and
Iraq.
la Mamma
He
di
did
Dio,
actually.
No, we didn't.
the
Why
Mother of
Israel
God.
is immune and even Saudi Arabia is immune? Because they are both religious states, both of them. It's the same thing. Christianity, Judaism. Well, in fact, Islam is much more progressive towards women than the most repressive religion to women is Judaism. You don't talk about it. You don't.
So,
the media don't.
Ladies and
The
gentlemen,
media never covers
let
it.
me address.
Never
Let me
ever.
address your
Never
point. Let me
ever.
address your point now. Let me answer his point.
Come on, Bob.
He's right
Yeah.
to point out that Judaism instills similar laws on women as Islam does.
Yeah.
But does the oppressive practices of the Jews justify the oppressive practices of Islam? No, it doesn't. Furthermore, the Jews are no threat to Judeo-Christian civilization. The Jews are not a proselytizing faith. They are a minority everywhere except Israel.
Okay.
However, 10% of France is now Muslim, and the values that the Muslim high street is being lived by in practice today as documented by France 24, not the BNP, is the fact that women are being pushed out of the high street of the suburbs of France. Don't believe me? Get out your phones, YouTube me right now. You can find the reports on France 24. You'll see.
Fake news.
Fake news.
Is that fake news, Bob?
French governments are sick.
They say fake news, Bob.
But furthermore, ladies and gentlemen,
The French monsieur.
Now, Bob.
there is a reason.
All religions.
There is a reason why Christians.
Yeah.
1 second.
Where's your slayer?
Ladies and gentlemen,
Where's your slayer?
Christians allowed women to the highest seats of authority in our societies. Catherine the Great was the empress of a Christian Orthodox state.
Right.
There are multiple women who have been leaders of Christian states. Elizabeth I was a woman who was the head of a Christian state. I challenge any Muslim to tell me the name of a single woman caliph.
Ah, the name of a single woman caliph.
Single woman caliph.
That's a good question, Bob. Who knows it?
There has never been a woman caliph, but there have been multiple Christian leaders of Christian kingdom.
Yeah. Bob, has there been a woman pope? He's
No,
asking.
sir, there has not. So, ladies and gentlemen,
Ah, Bob.
Christians have permitted women to hold the highest offices of state because Judeo-Christian values establish that women are made equal to men. Equal to men in their dignity and their attributes.
Society.
But there has never been a woman caliph. Never.
Why, Bob?
Because Islam teaches that women are
France
deficient
has already one of the highest rates of domestic violence in Europe every year. An estimated of 219 women aged between
He talks about
18
domestic abuse.
I don't
The Quran commands men to beat women.
To strike them.
That's what it says in the Quran.
But with a
If you
toothbrush.
suspect your women of disobedience, first admonish them, second banish them from your bed, thirdly strike them, is what the Quran prescribes.
Is that what that
He's talking about domestic abuse.
Ah, okay, I'm
The
gone.
shelters, the women's shelters of the United Kingdom are full of Muslim women. Yes, they are full of Muslim women
I don't believe that.
having abusive relationships.
Thank you. The white man,
There is no verse in the
when it comes to
Bible
the
that
ethnic
says
group,
that a
they
man
accept it.
should
When it
beat
comes to the white
his
man, they
woman
accept it.
because of
But carry on.
disobedience.
No way, no way.
Official figures, one woman is killed
Instead,
by a partner.
What the
or
Bible
former partner
teaches
every
is
3
that
days
men
in France.
should submit to their women and women should submit to their men. That men should honour women, their wives, and their wives
Palestine
should
said
honour their husbands.
The government should
There is a
introduce
difference
new measures to allow
between
people facing
building
abuse
your
to call for help
civilization
during the
on
lockdown.
Judeo-Christian values and building your
Rape in
civilization
France. Rape in
on
France.
Islam.
One French woman in 8 has been raped. About 4 million of French women were raped.
He's talking
in
about
total.
rape.
Of course,
There is a
12
rape epidemic going on in Sweden right now, and the vast majority of the culprits are Muslim migrants.
No,
But he doesn't
that's not
tell
true.
you that.
It's not true.
Sexual
I'm
abuse.
sorry,
Sexual
it's the
abuse.
Judeo-
They're white
Christian
people.
The Germans
Why
have
do you
had
twist the
to
truth? Why
institute
do you
lessons
twist the truth?
in
I carry on.
Germany
I carry on.
teaching
I carry
Muslim
on. I carry
refugees
on.
about
About 4 million
how
French
to
women,
treat
12%
women.
in total, have been raped at least once in their lives.
Women
Study
in
of
Germany
nation.
have been told
The
to cover up
the sexual
around
harassment
mosques
in France.
in Germany.
60%
The German
inappropriate
state is
behavior.
weak.
50%
Your liberal
sexiest
state
remarks
is
or
weak.
insults.
You need a better
45%
ideology
rude
than
sexual
liberalism.
gestures.
And that better
40%
ideology
touching without
is
consent.
muscular
France.
Christianity.
40% pornographic
Muscular
SMS
Christianity
or
is
email.
what the West
10%
needs.
of rape
Not
in France.
ethno-nationalism, not civic
According
nationalism,
to
not
l'agence
conservatism.
France
We need
has
to return
every
to
hour,
our Judeo-Christian
every
roots
hour
and build
in
our
France,
civilization
commits
upon what our
suicide
ancestors
every
built
hour,
their civilization
every hour.
upon.
600 suicides in France every year,
So-
according to the Agence France Presse. Rape, violence,
Are you
poverty.
excusing that the Quran says to beat your women?
No, it doesn't say.
It doesn't say that. He says that the Quran says it doesn't say strike your women. So now let's just
I gave you
expose
figures.
his
I
lies.
gave you figures.
Let's
I
expose
gave you
his lies.
figures. I gave you figures. You
The
have the
Quran
translation.
teaches. Oh, he's walking away now. Notice, he's walking away now.
If you want to be fair, you have to find out, and no, it's not. You need to find out about your Christian belief, try to analyze it.
Don't talk
and
about
see how-
religion.
So
Every
Surah
country
4,
religion.
34.
Christianity.
This brother just lied.
If that, of course,
Surah 4, verse 34.
Read there, Bob.
but everywhere, the white supremacy, enough is enough. It comes always from the white. We are white. We dictate you everything. You are
So,
dumb. They brought
in
the
Surah
Bible
4,
to the
Ayah
Africans and they
35,
took the land of the
this
Bible.
brother said I
Take the land.
lied. When I said we don't have
Forget.
tells you
I
to
don't
beat
treat my
women.
wife inferior.
This is what
I don't
it
treat her
says
inferior.
from the Quran. If you fear a breach between them, twain, arbiters. Sorry, let me just go to another. It's not that passage.
I defeated you now.
No, you haven't. Let's just look at it. Surah 4:34. Men are the protectors and maintainers of women. So it's established men as being above women, unlike in the Christian faith that says men and women are equal in honor. Because Allah has made one of them to excel the other. Did you hear that? Your man excels you, according to the Quran. To excel the other. And because they spend from their means, therefore the righteous women are devoutly obedient and guard in the husband's absence what Allah orders them to guard. As to those women on whose part you see ill conduct, admonish them, refuse to share their beds, beat them, is what the Quran says. So men are made to excel women, are made to protect and maintain women, and then are to admonish, abstain from the bed, and beat women. By contrast, the Bible teaches that a husband should honor his wife and his wife should honor her husband. There's no comparable verse in the Bible. And that is why, ladies and gentlemen, that all the way through medieval Europe, you saw women holding the highest offices of state. Why women were able to walk in public, and why in France in the 21st century women are disappearing from the suburbs of Paris.